Hey, Kim, are you there?
Hey, can you hear me, Dylan?
Yes.
Got me?
And
Okay, good.
I can also hear you over our speakers, so we're doing good.
Excellent. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I think we're good on our side.
Righty. Are y'all in the middle of a discussion or?
We're on a break right now,
Okay.
and we're going to get started at 9:30. So I'm going to go
Okay,
ahead and mute myself. There you are.
How's that look? Okay, I'm gonna blur my background here. I might shut off my camera. We'll see how the internet works here. I think it should be okay.
Okay. Yeah, everything.
Go ahead.
Everything's
Yeah,
coming
all good.
through on our end, so,
Okay,
yeah.
good. Let me try to share my screen just to make sure. I always stumble around with that. So
Okay.
it's the hardest part of the presentation, right?
Yeah, it's all right. And we're kind of in a cavernous room too, so.
Are you okay?
Yeah, it'll be a lot quieter here when you start in 5 minutes.
Okay. Try to do this in the right order. Whoops. Okay. Okay. Now if I go like this, I think this is right. Does that look like?
Yep.
Okay.
We are seeing it. Yeah, I think it's good on our side.
Awesome. So I'm going to switch. I'm going to try to do something here. If I switch, let's see here. Am I still sharing anything or is it?
No, now I just see your camera.
Okay. Okay, good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to IFTDSS at some point here. So let me get rid of this stuff. It'll be a little noodling around, but it's okay. I don't think it'll be too. So then you said you've got the folks there in the room, right? And then there'll be also folks dialing in.
Yeah, I sent that invite out, so I'm hoping some folks will be online as well.
Yeah, okay.
I'll go ahead and kick it off, right? You know, when we start off at 9:30 and just spend a few minutes talking about what we're doing here and what the training is for. And then I'll kick it over to you, and then it'll basically be your show. You don't need to kind of go back and forth unless you want to. If you want me to kind of gather up questions, you know, or maybe you pause in 15, 20 minutes or something. And I'm going to need to have people walk up to the microphone if they want to ask me questions.
Okay, I got you. That sounds fine.
No, other than that, I think we're good.
Okay, do we want to take a break partway through since it's, 90 minutes? It's kind of a.
Yeah. If you want to break it up, yeah, I definitely do that. And if you want to finish early, if you're done at 10:30, if you're done after an hour, then we'll wrap it up too. And we'll give these guys a little bit of time better because we've got multiple meetings going on. So we're going to have people bouncing back and forth.
Sure.
Yeah, we're flexible. You don't have to go the full 90.
Okay.
If you want to
That's fine. And I've got plenty to talk about, but I can also, I think what we'll do is I'll go through part way and then we can see how everybody's feeling. And if they, I can tell them, do you want me to show you this part or we can jump to the next, we can just keep it really casual and see how folks are what they're wanting to see. And if there's something in particular, then we can do that. If not, we'll just kind of move on. And yeah, I think that'll.
Does my audio sound good right now?
It does. Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Really good.
All right, yeah, we got a lot of time. So.
How many folks you got there in the room?
We probably have 50 in the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I'll try to adjust the L camera. I know my L camera, if I go in there and do a manual setting, it'll look a little better. So I'll get that.
So did you say 50 or 15?
50. There's probably 50 here.
Wow, good group. All right. That's awesome. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and just kind of hang tight and you can holler at me when we should get going.
Right.
And I think just so you know, Bree Schuler and Josh Hyde from my group will probably jump on. We'll see. They might come and go. It depends. They were going to be able to answer some questions if anyone online wanted to type anything into the chat. And also, if there's anything you're seeing or feel free. They're going to be watching the chat. So if you're by your computer, feel free to stick stuff in there. So, yeah. All right. Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks, man. All right.
Thank you. I appreciate
You
it.
bet.
And for the folks that are online, thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get kicked off here in just a second. We've got a few folks online anyway, so it could be a little weird. Guys in the room, I'm talking to both you and the camera right now, so bear with me for just a second before I get Kim Ernstrom ongoing. But I wanted to thank everybody for coming back. For those of you that are online, we are doing our Nevada Wildland Fire Service spring meeting in Reno, and we are in day 2 of it. And right now we're doing breakouts. And in the room, we've got fuels and fire planners from all of the districts across Nevada that used to be BLM districts. We also have representation from the Park Service and Fish and Wildlife Service here at this meeting. And we spent the morning talking about the transition to the Wildland Fire Service and some of the changes in authorities, specifically related to fuels and fire planning and WIFTDS. And what we're going to be doing for the next hour to hour and a half, we're kind of flexible with the schedule, is continuing to develop our depth and understanding of wildland fire decision support tools. And part of that is IFTDSS. So show of hands for the folks in the room, how many of you are users of IFTDSS? How many of you are users more than just entering FTEM? Okay, so a handful of you. So I really wanted to take the opportunity today to show what IFTDSS, what the capabilities of IFTDSS are there for both fuels planning and prescribed fire planning, but also for wildland fire modeling and decision support within WIFTDSS as well. And part of my position as fire planner for Nevada BLM / Nevada Wildland Fire Service is developing training in both WIFTDSS and fire modeling support. From our fall meeting, one of the tasks that was provided by the FMO group to me was to develop additional fire modeling training to help develop capacity and depth at the local level to start doing additional fire modeling within WIFTDSS. And for Nevada BLM, I've been a fire planner in Nevada for 10 years now, since 2015, basically. We've always had a strong spatially driven spatial fire plan from the day we were able to do it in WIFTDSS back in 2015. We always have good defensible WIFTDSS decisions for the most part for our decisions. But one thing that I think that we've never developed it fully is the analytics side of WIFTDSS, and being able to do not only, FS Pro modeling in WIFTDSS, but just general fire modeling. Now that we are in WIFTDSS next generation, we were hoping that there would be some additional developments in WIFTDSS next generation to support. We have FS Pro modeling in WIFTDSS, so we still have our probabilistic fire modeling that we've always been used to in WIFTDSS, which is FS Pro. But again, FS Pro is a probabilistic model. It's not a deterministic model. So when we're talking to FS Pro and we're showing FS Pro probabilities, a lot of people don't understand that there's differences between that and what you would get out of a minimum travel time run, or what we used to call a near-term fire behavior. Near-term is not available in WIFTDSS right now. We can't do any kind of near-term fire modeling in WIFTDSS. It's slated to be part of the next improvements in WIFTDSS, but there's no funding for WIFTDSS to do any additional improvements right now. So IFTDSS is filling a major gap in my mind by providing fire modeling services that can not only be used in place of FS Pro, probabilistic modeling, but they also have an MTT model that we can use for minimum travel time and deterministic modeling, which that gives you potential paths of the fire. It gives you time frames. Do you have 48 hours? Do you have 72 hours? Do you have 96 hours? And it allows you to start identifying values in front of your fire and quantifying what is that true risk to those values. And all that is driven from good defensible fire modeling, which is what we're going to talk more about today. So I'm very pleased that Kim Ernstrom has agreed to. Kim Ernstrom works with IFTDSS, and I'll let Kim introduce herself, but she's going to be doing some IFTDSS fire modeling for us. She's been working for IFTDSS for a long time. And she is also a very well-respected LTAN in the wildland fire community. So I'm very happy to be able to provide Kim and have Kim come on here and do this for us. And Kim, I'm going to pass it over to you and let you take it from here.
All righty. Needed one more sip of coffee to get everything going. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? We're all good, Dylan, on the sound? All right. Fabulous. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting us to do this. I also want to mention that Bree Schuler is online with us as well. Bree is actually the lead for IFTDSS currently with the Wildland Fire Management RD&A group. And she's going to be, for the folks that are online, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them right into the chat. And she'll be able to, as we're going through, she can jump on some questions like that. And Dylan, if there's anything you want to throw into the chat too, Bree will be able to pick up on that if we need to slow down or back up or repeat something or whatever. I know you're in a big room, and I get that, it's not always easy to ask questions and stuff. So I'll let you guys kind of sort out how you want to do that. Feel free to interrupt me, and if we want to address something, you'll find I try to be pretty casual about these presentations, and I want folks to, kind of see what we're doing, but then, ask questions if we need to, or we can go down a few rabbit trails and stuff. There's a lot to talk about. We're not going to cover it all today by any means. This is sort of a get familiar, see what these things can do to help you. We're going to talk about prescribed fire and about some wildfire stuff. So with that, let me do the hardest part of the presentation, which is sharing my screen.
And Kevin, while you're switching over, I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping here for the people here in the room. I'm going to mute the mic. If you guys want to ask a question, just raise your hand and I'll unmute the mic and then you can ask your question. But that way we can try to filter out any background noise or anything. It's all you, Kim.
Sounds good. All right. Now I can see you, Dylan, too. So I'm going to try to keep your little bubble up and I can see Bree, or Bree, if you want to shut your camera, whatever you want to do. But like I said, just you wave your hand, or I'm not sure I can see the chat. So anyway, we'll figure that out. We'll just go ahead and get rolling, and we're good at winging these things, I think, these days. So holler at me if we need to do something a little different. And yeah, without further ado, okay, I think Dylan asked how many folks had seen or used IFTDSS. It sounded like a few, and obviously some people use it for the fuels treatment effectiveness monitoring database, under your wildfire and fuels treatment interaction. So that's we know people are at least seeing some of it. But what I want to do is go through sort of the basic functions, showing you example. I have a BLM. Tyson gave me a burn plan from Nevada, which is great. And I played around with that a little bit to show you some different ways you can use some of this spatial modeling to make the burn plans even a little bit better. I was excited to see in that burn plan that there was already IFTDSS outputs in there, which was so cool. I love it. And which I'm really glad to see that. And I can show you a few ways to sort of enhance things further using some of that spatial stuff. And then we will talk about some wildfire modeling and how IFTDSS can fit into this fire season. For a quick, let me just do a quick introduction. You don't have to read this, but I retired last August from the National Park Service after about 25 years, and was working at NIFC for the Wildland Fire Management RD&A group. Mostly working on IFTDSS and WIFTDSS and LTAN and fire behavior, teaching a lot of burn boss classes and fire behavior classes, 390, 490, 590 over the years. Do a lot of LTAN work, fire behavior work in the summer. So it's something I've been doing for a long time. And we're really finding IFTDSS started in about 2017 as when we first released it. And here we are, gosh, it's going to be 10 years next year, which is amazing. And we've got over 8,000, almost 9,000 users now. So I think it might catch on eventually, which is cool. So IFTDSS was originally designed for kind of pulling all these pieces of fuels treatment planning together. It's mostly for fuels. We're kind of shifting gears a little bit and adding in some of the wildfire stuff because obviously we're needing some of that support given what Dylan was saying with next gen not being able to do everything we want it to do. But this is mostly what folks are using IFTDSS for right now, for CW, a lot of CWPPs, burn plans, certainly, NEPA specialist reports, looking at how you're reducing flame lengths or fire behavior for a NEPA type of project, and then risk assessments. So we're going to focus on the burn plan stuff and the wildfire stuff for this discussion, but I think it'll give you a flavor of what it can do for some of those other things. IFTDSS was built to work sort of at the project level and sort of the unit level. So project meaning like an individual project of a prescribed fire, a NEPA, analysis, all the way up to, we can do up to 3.5 million acres of analysis at a time, which is a pretty big landscape. A forest level, maybe a small park, it kind of depends, right? On what your unit looks like. But you could do an analysis over a pretty large size of a unit, or maybe a subunit. We left the regional and national stuff to the folks in Missoula. We don't want to mess with that. They've got their own ways of doing those types of analysis. We really want this to be in the hands of folks in the field that are doing work and implementing work on the ground. So that's kind of where IFTDSS fits into things. Like I said, we've got almost 9,000 user accounts now, and that goes across government and non-government. It's open to everyone. Anybody can get an account in IFTDSS. It's unlike WIFTDSS that way, where if you have partners that are not federal or government in general, maybe you've got an NGO, there's a nature conservancy, neighbor, or just the private sector, some ranchers, any neighboring landowners that want to be able to look at some maps. Folks in academia are using it a lot for teaching classes. So we're striving really hard to keep it open to everybody, and we want to add some tools where people can collaborate as well. So anyway, so our user base is fully integrated across all aspects of folks who are interested in dealing with fuels treatment work. We've got a lot of training online. We've got a lot of resources online. We have a fabulous help center, and I really encourage folks, if you're not familiar, it's a really user-friendly help center. It's got gobs of information in it. It's pretty easy to search. And I think you can find just about anything you're looking for in the help center. There's tutorials. There's all kinds of little walkthrough. You can download PDFs of things. You can watch little videos. There's just all kinds of stuff in our help center. It's really fantastic. Josh Hyde from the University of Idaho has built our help center and continues to maintain it. We've also built some classes on the Wildland Fire Learning Portal. We've got 2 right now that are current. One is just an IFTDSS overview, which is if you go to the self-enroll courses, they're listed there. The IFTDSS overview is this one in the top right corner. It kind of walks you through all the basics of IFTDSS. So if you're brand new, you can go to that online course and within a couple hours, just walk through all the different pieces. And then we also have what we're using for some of the Burn Boss refresher courses. And that one was based on the Cerro Grande, we kind of a look back 20 years ago actually 25 years ago was Cerro Grande down in New Mexico. And we put together a refresher based on that escaped prescribed fire. So you can take a peek at that if you need some sort of Burn Boss refresher stuff. We've got a bunch of recorded webinars. I think those are really, really useful. You can kind of scroll through what's in there. And so anyway, there's a ton of resources online for folks that want to be self-starters. And I think that's how most people have learned this stuff, is just by digging in and kind of starting on their own. You can always reach out to us on the help desk. We are really responsive to people, and you'll get one of us. If you throw in a help desk question, you're going to get one of us. We don't outsource any of that stuff. It comes right to us. We're all fire people, and we'll answer your question as quickly as we can, or we'll find somebody that can if we can't. So we do a lot of that. So navigating IFTDSS is based on sort of these four things, if you will. We have a planning cycle. We tried to base IFTDSS on sort of an adaptive planning cycle. So from evaluating your landscape, doing strategic planning, implementing things on the ground, monitoring, reporting, all centered around a map, because all of us are very spatial thinkers and grasp things better by seeing it on a map, we have found. So we developed this map studio, which is a AGOL, a sort of very customized AGOL format. We're just about to release a brand new map that's going to be awesome. And that'll keep working with everything like it has. But so we've got our planning cycle, our map studio, our workspace where we store everything, and then our playground, which is where our fire behavior models live. And I'm going to go through all these. I'm going to show you this stuff live. We're not going to just do screenshots here. I just wanted to get this part introductory kind of out in the wild here. We use all the reference data sets. We try to make them the same as WIFTDSS. They're not all the same, but if you're familiar with WIFTDSS, most of the reference data sets in IFTDSS are the same. They're all sourced from services. We don't house them. They come from a service. So if stuff gets updated in the list of reference data, it's because of whoever owns that data set. So we don't have a lot of control over those data sets. We just steal them and use them in our map. So if you ever have questions, we'll probably point you back to the authoritative source of that data. You can also upload a lot of your own data. If you have shape files and things like that, it's really easy to upload stuff. We use Landfire as the base data for fuel models and all the other things that go along with fuel models and elevation and aspect and all that stuff. We've got everything from 2016, which was the remap year for Landfire. And then we've got the 2022, 23, 24 updates. So Landfire updates annually based on disturbance. So we try to pull in the latest and greatest. Right now it's 2024. They will soon have 2025 later in the year. They're always a year behind, so you always have to keep that in mind when you're using Landfire data, that if something isn't showing up in the Landfire data, it's because it wasn't captured. It wasn't yet captured. So, for example, one of the fires I'm going to show you, the Cottonwood Peak fire from last year, is not, you won't see that in the Landfire data because that happened, last summer, and it hasn't been captured in the Landfire data yet. So if you wanted to do something with the post fuel models of the Cottonwood Peak fire, you'd have to edit your landscape, and we have tools in IFTDSS to do that. So I just wanted to kind of remind everybody of how Landfire works on its update cycle. IFTDSS has the very easy way to generate reports. So anything you do in there, if you're running a fire behavior model or you want to summarize your fuel models, you can generate a report in IFTDSS. It'll give you pie charts and bar charts, little thumbnails. You can actually get the actual data in these. You can see the little data set in their upper left corner. You can download that into an Excel spreadsheet, so you can do whatever you want with the actual data. But reports are super easy. We also have a thing we call map values, where a lot of risk assessment work, even prescribed fire plans, NEPA, is based on the values, right, that are either in your burn unit or your surrounding project area, whatever it might be. You can set up your own specific map value set and save it. And then you can use it over and over again for different projects. You can add values to it. You can take values away. We have national reference layers that go into these values, or you can upload your own. So pretty flexible with that. But it's a key part of doing a risk assessment. So that's why we have the map values function. Okay. So what I'm going to do is run through a little bit on fire behavior models. I'm going to do a quick demo of some of the basic features. Then maybe we'll take a little break. And then what I'll do is come back and talk a little bit about burn plans and how we can use all these things in our burn plans using one of the ones that Tyson gave me to show you how I took a little creative license with it just for demonstration purposes. But we'll talk about that burn plan. So IFTDSS has 3 fire behavior models, and Dylan touched on this a little bit. We have a basic, they all come from FlamMap. So if you've heard of FlamMap, it's the desktop software that was developed through the Missoula Fire Lab. We still use FlamMap today. It's actually also filling a gap right now for IFTDSS. But what we've done is taken the code from the FlamMap desktop system and brought that into IFTDSS. It's the same code that they used in the old IFTDSS for running the short-term fire behavior and the near-term fire behavior. So everyone's using the same code these days, which is really good. It didn't used to be that way, but we're finally all on the same page. We use a thing called the Fire Modeling service, which again is a service. It's the same service that feeds these models to any other applications out there. If you're using any software from, say, a private industry, likely it's coming from FlamMap. That's mostly what folks use. They might tell you and try to sell you something otherwise, but generally speaking, it's probably from FlamMap. So we have these 3 models: the landscape fire behavior, which is basically behave on a map, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. The minimum travel time, which is the old short-term fire behavior from IFTDSS, and that shows fire spreading with a single set of weather parameters. And then we do not have FS Pro, and we do not have the near term. which is the hourly fire spread. Those are the two models we don't have in IFTDSS. We might in the future, depending on what happens with WFDS. There's a lot up in the air right now with the development of these applications and the budget and staffing and all the things you guys are well aware of. So we'll see what happens in the future. We do have a probability model in IFTDSS, and it's quite a bit different than FS Pro, and I'll show you it and how it's different. It's mostly used for risk assessments, but it could be useful for some other things, and I'll show you what I think about that. So let me just walk through these really quickly, just to give you a flavor of what each of these does and how you can use them. The old Behave is on the far left, right? We have Behave 7 now, but you guys remember Behave, right? You put numbers in for your weather, and you get charts and some graphs out of Behave, right? It's all non-spatial. It's not represented on a map. With IFTDSS, what we do is we take those same algorithms and we display those numbers that you get in the tables in Behave, and we basically give it a color and we put it on the map. So it's now spatial. And we do that because we use land fire data. So that's sort of this middle one. That would be the landscape fire behavior in the middle. It's just Behave on a map. And there are some differences, and I'll explain those in a minute. And then the more advanced model is this minimum travel time spread model, which you give it one set of weather, and you say, blow the wind on it for 3 hours. And I just want one burn period. And then it will show where the fire will spread in 3 hours for one burn period. And that's what you're seeing on the far right. That's how the minimum travel time works. It's what we used to call short term in WFDS. You can use short term or this minimum travel time in IFTDSS and in FlamMap right now. So like we still use the Rothermel spread equation. If you remember way back to your S390 course when you learned all this stuff, all of the models we use, everyone, and like I said, even in private industry, we all still use the same model from 1972, Richard Rothermel and his algorithm. We have not invented a new one yet. Again, private industry will try to sell you one, but it's not. It's the same thing. They may have modified it some, but just be cautious of that stuff. We're all still using the same spread equation for the most part. There are some new ones being developed, and I bet in the next 5-10 years, we'll probably start using those. But right now, we're all still using the same thing. So no matter what application you use, Behave, IFTDSS, FlamMap, WFDS, it's the same stuff. So all the assumptions we use in these models are still the same. This is Behave, right? This is the stuff we would typically see in Behave. Behave 7 was just released recently, and the folks up in Missoula, Faith Ann Heitch and Lowen Hollingsworth, are managing Behave 7. And it's a much better user interface than the old Behave. They're still working out some kinks. Behave still has some usefulness, I'll say. I don't want to say that that IFTDSS or these spatial tools completely replace Behave, but a lot of people still use Behave, and that's perfectly fine for doing for prescribed fire planning and stuff. And then people will also try to use IFTDSS side by side, right? And they'll say, why don't my numbers match up exactly with Behave if it's still using the same equations, right? Well, the same base equations are being used, but what we have to remember about Behave is it's calculating fire behavior for a point in time, not being represented on a map. In IFTDSS, we use Wind Ninja. You guys have probably heard of Wind Ninja. You know that you have wind over a landscape, and Wind Ninja adjusts the wind based on terrain. So we use Wind Ninja in IFTDSS. So that's going to adjust some of the wind speeds going over passes or eddying, around mountain ranges or whatnot. Behave can't capture that. So if we have a 20-foot wind at 10 miles an hour, Behave uses just that, right? It'll correct like we've learned in 390, right? It corrects for the effective wind speed based on trees and slope. Behave does correct for that. But IFTDSS takes it one step further and will correct it for using the Wind Ninja model. So you might have a 10-mile-an-hour, 20-foot wind, but once you correct it for terrain, it might only be like a 2-mile-an-hour effective wind. So the number that IFTDSS uses in the math versus what Behave uses in the math end up being a little bit different. So that'll cause your output to be a little bit different. So that's why if a lot of people will say, well, I ran this in Behave and I got, 10 mile or, 10 chains per hour in spread, but it was only like 6 chains per hour in spread in IFTDSS. And the reason is because IFTDSS is doing a little extra math in the background to refine some of those numbers. Neither one is wrong. One's just a little bit more accurate, a little more precise. Behave doesn't do any conditioning either. IFTDSS takes into account elevation and aspect. So as you move up and down a landscape or a mountain range, right? Fuel moisture changes as you might have higher fuel moisture at higher elevations or a different aspect. IFTDSS knows that. It takes that into account in its calculations where Behave does not. So that, again, that's another reason you might see some differences between Behave and IFTDSS. And same thing with the other spatial models. So keep that in mind. Sometimes people get a little concerned about that they're doing something wrong, and you're not. It's just the differences in the way the calculations go. Use them both. They're all still good and still valuable tools. I think using some of the spatial tools in IFTDSS can help really tell your story, I guess. We use Landfire in IFTDSS. And of course, it's got this stack of information in it. It's got elevation, slope, aspect. That's how IFTDSS can do these finer calculations than Behave, because it has this extra information that Behave does not account for. We also have all of the canopy characteristics, right? Fuel model is very important for surface fire spread. We all use that. We all are very familiar with our 40 fuel models, right? But we also have to account for canopy characteristics. And whether you're in a shrub environment or a forested environment, canopy characteristics are mapped separately than your surface fuel model. So if you have spotting, for example, right, things that cause spotting, oftentimes that's not from the surface fuel model, that's from the canopy. So the way we get spotting and stuff in these models is based on these canopy pieces. And I'll show you how we can look at those in our map, and they can tell you quite a bit about what to expect when it comes to fire behavior, and how it can really help you. Just by looking at that alone, you can look at areas on your map that might cause you problems with spotting and slopping over a burn unit or whatnot. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So that's how Landfire fits into our puzzle pieces in the IFTDSS program. So like I said, what IFTDSS does is it pixelizes your landscape. And in our case, most people use 30-meter pixels. That's generally, you can scale them differently, but that's a fair standard. And then we take that spread equation that we've been using forever, and we basically do a calculation for each square on the map. We get a number, we give it a color, and that's what you're seeing in IFTDSS. So that's why I say it's like running Behave, but we're putting it on a map. So it's really not a whole lot more complex than that, except for, a few other the nuances because we use the terrain and some of the extra information that we wouldn't normally have. So when we put all this together and we put in our inputs as a user, you're putting in wind direction and wind speed, your fuel moistures, and you have to choose a crown fire model in IFTDSS. And there's some reading you can do about how to choose those things. They are quite different. They produce different results, but we've got a lot of help in the help center to help people understand the differences. But those are really the only things you need to know to put into IFTDSS. You don't have to pick a fuel model because it knows what it is from the map. Now you have to verify the fuel model on the map. We're going to take what Landfire gives us, and we as the analysts have to look at it and go, is that actually what's on the ground out there? And if it's not, then we go in and we change it to what we know it is. Landfire isn't always right. It's a lot better than it used to be, for sure, and it's getting better all the time. It's actually gotten quite good, I will say, in the last 5 or so years. So it already knows the slope in the fuel model. You don't have to put, and behave, you would normally have to put those numbers in. And IFTDSS, you don't, it's taking it right from the map. And then you hit go, you give it a name, and in a few minutes, you will have an output that looks like this. So this is what you can see on the legend here is flame length. And this is what it looks like on the map. This is like our burn unit here in the middle. And then you can generate some reports to summarize those outputs that you just produced. So that's the basic model. And you can get a lot of it. I'm going to show you how to use this for your burn plan and why even just this very basic model can be really super helpful in writing a plan or even a wildfire situation if you need to start figuring out what division is going to have the highest fire behavior or whatnot. The minimum travel time model is the one I said that does the spread, right? It does a spread based on a single weather setting. So in this case, same deal. IFTDSS is using the information on the map. You give it a wind direction and a wind speed. You give it a set of fuel moistures. And then you have to tell it where you want it to ignite from. And you have to tell it how long you want it to burn. And the rest is dealt with from the map again. And then you can get these outputs. This one's showing rate of spread. I ran this one only for one burn period, so it only has one blob on it. Basically, it's showing I think a 3-hour, 2-hour set of spread. And now if this is a prescribed fire unit, I can see, well, if I get a spot fire outside of my unit, how big is that thing going to get within an hour or 2 hours? And that can tie into your contingency plan, your organization element in your burn plan or whatnot. So this is another example with putting this into Google Earth. So you can actually look at it on the Google Earth map, which actually also becomes really useful. And we're going to be developing KMZs here soon, so you can just grab them and put them into Google Earth. So anyway, like I said, you can see right away that this can be a really valuable tool especially for prescribed fire planning. But again, say this is a wildfire and you've got a division, this is your division, and you're about to do a burnout. Now you can start to get an idea of what happens if you lose your burnout. It'll help you with that too. And this is the probability model. Remember, I said there's 3 models in IFTDSS. The third one being a probability model, which is different than FS Pro. Basically, I'm not going to go into this one in too much detail here, but you can look at it in the Help Center if you'd like. Basically, what it's doing is it's calculating a probability at a pixel, whereas FS Pro calculates the probability as the fire spreads. In this case, it's just calculating it at a pixel level. So you can say in this map, what is the probability a pixel on this map might burn? Well, some areas have a higher probability just based on the fuel model, or maybe the slope, and those things combined. So that's what we use this probability model for, and it's mostly used for risk assessment. But it could be used for other things. As long as you understand that it's doing a very sort of broad brush look at probability. And that's all I'm going to say about that one. I just want you to be aware that it's in there. Okay, so let me switch over. We've been going for, let's see, what time did we started? About 35 minutes. Let me do about a 10-minute demo here, and then we'll take a little break. Come back, and then I'll show you how this all looks in a burn plan and talk briefly about wildfire. So I'm going to get out of here. Any questions that folks have or comments or just curiosities or whatnot? Feel free to throw out any questions you have.
I think we're good in here, Kim.
Good so far? Okay. Is this making sense to folks? You can nod your head. I can see you guys in the camera. Is this useful? This might be a useful thing. It's not hard to learn, and I think once I show you how easy it is to use, hopefully I'll convince you further. But like I said, IFTDSS is free, so I'm not here to sell anything. I'm just here to help you understand that these tools are available, and we really want you guys to use the best tools you can, or phone a friend, right? If you've got, maybe you're not the button, and we don't expect everybody to be the button clicker. But if you need some help and you're like, hey, I saw this cool demo, and maybe I'm not the analyst guy, but I wanna just get somebody to help me with this. At least you kind of know what to ask for, right? And you can maybe get an FBAN or an LTAN or a planner. There's a lot of folks that are using this that aren't FBANs or LTANs, and they're good analysts, and And I think it's just figure out who's around your neighborhood that can help. So this is the IFTDSS homepage here. And you can see there's a whole bunch of links. We tried to keep this all updated, all these blue links down here. We update this stuff pretty frequently. Our user support is up here in the user support tab under the help center. You can click on that. And it's just all menu based here on the left. You can type in a search term. It's got a great search engine in it. You can type in about anything. If we have any news or kind of breaking news on things that aren't working, sometimes we'll put them in here so you can figure out what's like, why isn't that working or such. So the help center is a really valuable resource. If you're brand new to this stuff, getting started will get everybody started and walk you through. So here's some tutorials, the courses, and we'll just really help. Just use the help center. It's going to be a great resource for you. Okay, so once I log in, it's going to look like this. I've already logged in, so I don't have to mess with. It's through FAMOff, so your PIV card will get you into IFTDSS pretty easily. So here's our planning cycle, like I originally talked about. Landscape evaluation. You can click on these different, we call them like little petals, sort of around the circle, and then the map studio in the middle. What we like to do is if we go to the cycle, which is up here, so you navigate across the top, we've got our cycle, and you can see each time you click on one of these, this is landscape, all these cards become available to use. Strategic planning opens up a whole new set of cards for you. And you can see some of these under development. They'll be coming in the future. You can, and anyone who's done, obviously has done FTEM. This is where FTEM lives. We also have access now through the FFI Data Depot. So anyway, that's how you kind of work your way around there. The map studio, and you can click on the circle. It'll take you right to the map. That's the basic ways to navigate those pieces. We have a workspace, and that's where all your files live. So anything you generate lives in the workspace. And what we've got, I've got a good, you can see I'm like way over my storage limit. They generously let me have more storage than we actually, it's a secret, but it might say you're getting close to capacity, but you'll probably be okay. Don't worry about it if you are. You can just ask forgiveness. And they probably won't delete anything on you. But you can sort through all the different things with this filter. So if I wanted to just look at the landscapes I generated, I can click on that, and I'm just going to see landscapes. You'll see if you start using this, you generate a gazillion files. So having a good file naming structure and sort of folders, and we've got a whole bunch of folders. You can add folders here at the bottom, and everybody can live in a folder. So I built a folder for today, the BLM 2026 Fuels and Ops meeting, and you can see these are the 3 landscapes that I've developed so far. I could go up here and look at my map. These are all the model outputs I ran over the last few days, putting some of this stuff together. I can look at my map bookmarks. We have a way to bookmark a map. So you set your map up the way you like it, and then you can make a bookmark so you don't have to keep adding your same layers back and forth. You just go right to your bookmark. Anyway, anything, all the reports I've generated are in here. So it's really easy to use the workspace and find the stuff. Anything you click on in the workspace or hover over, it'll show up in the right-hand side, and it'll give you all the basic information about it. So if you've got a model output and I ran this basic fire behavior and I wanted to see what my inputs were, I can just hover over it or click on it, and it'll give me here's my fuel moistures. Here's the wind speed I used. So there's a lot of information on this page without even having to look at it on the map. You can just go here and remind yourself what you did. So that's how the workspace works. The playground is the place we run our fire behavior models. You click on that, you select your model, you've got 3 choices, and then you can set that model up just like you would, like I said, if you're more familiar with Behave. You click on that model, you say create run. We made this so you can split the map, so you can either just look at your inputs and you use these little drop down boxes. This is where I'd add my wind speed, or this little thing in the corner, you can click this and it'll split the map so I can have the map on the left and my inputs on the right. And that way, when I'm entering numbers, I can kind of helps me for me, looking at the map always helps me make sure I'm doing what I want to do. So running a basic fire behavior model, it's really as simple as, actually, let me back up. Before I do that, let me go back to show you how to create a landscape first. I'm getting ahead of myself. So anyway, that's the playground. So if I'm ready to actually do some work in here and I have a project, I can start at the cycle. If you don't know where to start, always start at the top at landscape evaluation. And the first thing you always need to do is to create a landscape. So I'm going to create a landscape. We're hooked up to Landfire. So I'm going to zoom over here to Nevada, which is where I did some of these projects. And say I got the burn unit boundaries for this burn plan that Tyson gave me. So I'm going to upload that shape file. I'm going to go find that shape file and I put it in here. And it's under this. It's this. You guys might, I don't know, some of you might be familiar. It's this Basque Henry burn plan over there south of Ely. So I grabbed I made myself a nice little zip file of the burn units. And it has to be a zip file, kind of like WFTDS. You zip your shape file together. So there it is. I'm just going to say open. And it's going to go get that shapefile, upload it to the map. You're going to give it a name and you're going to tell it where to live in your folders. You can create a new folder if you want. I encourage everybody to build folders and name things very specifically because, like you said, you end up with a lot of stuff. And you say save and add to map. And it's going to go ahead and upload that thing and stick it on your map for you. And that's the base. Once you have that, then you can do all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to just go ahead and turn that off because I already have one of these. This is going to pull the lasagna out of the oven here. And let's see, show you I'm going to make a the easiest way to make a landscape is to just give it a name. Once I've uploaded my shape file, I can grab my, where are you? There it is. I can grab my shape files and then I can say, I can create a landscape based on those shape files. And I am just gonna, I picked my shape files and now I'm gonna figure out which version of Landfire I want to use. 2024 is the newest. I want to do 40 fuel models. You could still run 13 fuel models if you like. And sometimes there's reason to do that. You're going to give your landscape a name, a very specific name, so it's easy to find. And you're going to tell it which folder you want it to live in. And then you're going to hit go. And eventually it'll take a little bit of time to get the information from Landfire. In this case, I am just going to show you what one looks like. And I'll just turn this one on. And there we go. Now we've got our landscape on our map. Turn on my layer list. I can turn off some of this extraneous stuff. And you can see, I can look at the fuel model. I can use the information tool up here to click on the map and figure out what fuel model is that. I can turn on my burn units, my burn unit boundaries here. I could add other reference data on here. There's utility, I could put on transmission lines. There's any number of things I can add in here. Comm towers. Like I said, a lot of this is the same stuff you'd find in WFTDS. I can find boundaries, jurisdictional units, who's got protection over certain areas. Here's the Forest Service up here. To the north, Ely is, if I zoom out a little bit, you can see the town of Ely up here. And here's our burn unit area, Great Basin National Parks over here. So we can turn some of that stuff on. We can look at RAWS stations, all of those things. Like I said, the kind of the standard stat you'd see in WFTDS and whatnot. So you can play around with the values that are available in there. So that's the map. We also have a neat feature I like to show folks, sometimes I forget, is this this little swipe tool, which is kind of cool. If you're trying to see, I can change the base layer. So say I want to change it to a more of a Google Earth kind of image. I can use this little swipey tool, and I can look at the fuel models, and I can look at the kind of the Google Earth underneath of it. So if I'm like, what's causing that fuel model change in there? And I can look and see, and I can kind of start to get an idea. I'm like, well, this is let's see, I don't know what year this, I'd have to look, I think it's underneath here, what year this Google Earth image is. I think it pulls in the most recent. And I can say, well, does land fire, did it map it correctly? Is that really what's there? And, sometimes you have to correct these things. So we have a way to do that with some edit tools. And you can change one fuel model to another to say that's not a shrub layer. We actually did a mechanical treatment. It's more of a grass layer in there now. And you can change your shrub to grass or whatever you need to do. We've got a lot of instructions in the help to show you how to change fuel models. So I encourage folks to look at that. But this is a great tool to kind of get an idea of what's on your landscape and if it really matches what land fire is telling you, or your fire behavior. You might get a fire behavior output, and you want to look at that and see if it's like what's causing those high flame lengths. And you can use the little swipey to do that. Let's see. Let me see what time it is here. Okay, I'm going to take a little break. Let me just really quick. This is where you make a bookmark. So this is probably one of my favorite features in IFTDSS. It took me a long time to get the developers to build this for me. They did. It's awesome. So once I add my landscape and I say I turn a bunch of layers on, and I want to always come back to that so I don't have to keep turning them back on every time I leave the map, I'm going to create a new bookmark. I'm going to give it a name here. I'd save it. Like for this example, I'll save it in my BLM folder of fuels meeting, and I'll say create. And then every time I want to come back to the exact same map with all the right layers turned on, I just go to that bookmark in my workspace. I could do an add to map. I have a nice bookmark I built for this. There it is. Whoops. And that bookmark that I built will turn on here in a second. I think there it goes. So this is the bookmark I built for this because I didn't want to have to keep turning the layers all on and off all the time. So I just click that, and now I've got all kinds of cool information on here that I had saved earlier. I've got RAW stations. I've got fuels treatments from last year. I've got my land fire data. I've got urban interface, which is the light yellow. I've got high value structures. So anyway, I got lots of good stuff on here that I pulled from the reference data and now saved it so I can just go to it easily. All right, let's go ahead and take, is 5 minutes good? Everyone stretch, grab a drink, cup of coffee, whatever you need to do. Let's come back at, what do you say, 10:25? Is that enough time? You guys need a little longer? I'm good either way, so.
Yeah, that works good for us, Kim. See you in 5.
Let's take 5 and we'll come back and we'll look at some burn plans and some wildfire stuff, and then you can be on your way.
All right, Kim, we got folks kind of filtering back in, so feel free to start whenever you're ready.
All right, sounds great. We'll keep on cranking here.
Okay.
All right, so I just wanted, before I switch over to the burn plan stuff, real quick, just want to show you how easy it is to run a fire behavior model. So this is that, this is the basic fire behavior model run. I grabbed that landscape that I already built. I've got my burn plan units over here, you can see. So just like I would put numbers into behave, this is what I do. I say wind speed, say I want a 10 mile, these are 20-foot winds. If you're not sure what this stuff is, you can click on the little blue question mark. It'll give you a pop-up and you can read quickly about what that is. If you need more information, you can click on more information. It'll take you to the help center and then you can learn a lot more about what that's about. So that's how the little pop-ups work. They're really, really helpful. So I put in my wind speed. Say I want a westerly wind, so I'll say 270 is my wind direction. This is where I choose my crown fire inputs. Either I'm using the Scott and Reinhardt or the Finney model. And again, you can read about that stuff if you don't know what that is. Click on the crown fire little question mark. It'll help you understand that. I'm going to put in some fuel moistures. So I just put in some, some numbers that maybe I pulled it right from the burn plan. In this case, I did like a low, a middle, and a high end of our prescription. So I'm just going to stick numbers in here. 4, 6, 8, 60, and 90. That was what I'm going to use for my 5 fuel moistures. I can decide to use conditioning, which is the thing that adjusts it for elevation and slope and aspect, or I can choose not to. And just see what I get initially. And you can read about what that is. And I'm going to give it a name. It's here at the bottom. I'll just give it the test run number 1 and save it and hit run. And then I'm going to let it go crank away for a minute. And in this case, what I did is I went ahead and ran some of these ahead of time so they would be easy to look at. And they're going to show up in that workspace like I showed you earlier. And then if I want to look at it on the map, I can either click on it from the workspace or I can go down here to my output tools, which is the little flame at the bottom. And now the internet is slow, of course. And if I click filter by map extent, I'll only see the files that fall within my view and my map. And I'm going to pick now of course it's hanging up on me now. Of course. Love it. And I'll just grab one here. I think I can find one that will work. Oh goodness. Refresh. All right. Oh no, I think anyway, I might not be able to show you. It's locking up on me. I don't know why it's doing that. One more time. Oh, it's not liking it. I've probably clicked too many times. I'm kind of like my mom. She starts clicking on everything. All right, let's try this again. We're going to do this we'll do it from the workspace here. Landscape fire behavior. Okay, here we go. Here, so let's say this was the low end of our prescription. We'll say view on map. It's another way to do it. And it'll zoom us right in there. And we'll be able to see what the flame lengths, the rate of spread, crown fire activity. We can add those burn units back to the map. And there we go. Or we could have turned our map bookmark back on. Now I can see what that fire behavior is based on those inputs I just put in the right-hand side. So you can see it's pretty easy. This is not rocket science. Anybody can run these things and get some information out that helps inform what you're up to. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my IFTDSS screen and switch back over to the slides. And I'll show you how I put this into the burn plan that Tyson got for me. So let me go ahead and share this. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. Yep. So basically what we're doing here is looking at using this tool for prescribed fire Because when we have these escapes, often it's the same, it's the same premise that we've had for years and years. So starting in 2000 up to the review that was done in 2022, we keep seeing these repeated issues with burn plans. So what we did is we developed some of this stuff so we could address these three elements in the burn plan. And I think IFTDSS fits best in these three. So the description of the fire area, the prescription, and the holding plan. So that's what we're going to talk about. So this is the burn plan that Tyson grabbed. And this is element 4. So I pulled this from Google Earth so you can see kind of the landscape and the terrain there. We're just south of Ely, like I said earlier. And I'm going to populate this description of the fire area using some of these IFTDSS tools. Mostly I'm going to focus on the on-site and adjacent fuels data, and then some of the topographic, and then the maps. So let me go to the next one here. So this is the element 4, elevation, slope, and aspect. We can actually get quite a bit of information and use that in our plan, which we often don't do, but can be helpful. And then the on-site and adjacent fuels. So that's what we did here. So in this case, I'm looking at Google Earth. I'm looking at elevation, slope, and aspect. And a lot of times we kind of disregard those three, but in my opinion, they can be really important because of the way you look at fuel moistures when you're actually implementing, or, if you're trying to do holding and it's either early season or late season, fuel moistures make a huge difference in your fire behavior, right? And we get caught off guard a lot on what we might get for fire behavior. So knowing our aspects and kind of analyzing that a little further, you can see a lot of this unit has an easterly, it's got almost 60% of it has an easterly aspect. 35 of it has a southerly component, and the rest is very minimal. So you're going to get some drier fuel moistures in the fall. I mean, this is common sense, but now we can actually look at it on the map and put it into our plan. So we can get these reports, like I said, from IFTDSS, and then we can kind of really scrutinize some of the pieces of the puzzle as we're writing these plans. I like to do that for those two, and then this is the fuel model report. So we can look at what Landfire gave us within the unit. A lot of it's shrub, right? And this was what was written in the plan, which is, they spot on. They used IFTDSS to get this information, which was great. So this is all the on-site data, but you can see displaying this spatially like this is a lot more informative than just looking at the percentages. So I really like to add these into my plans. And then this is outside of the unit. And this is always a little tricky. We have if you look in the help, we actually developed, this is a kind of a WAG on how to do this. We're going to hopefully develop a buffer tool. Right now, what I did is I drew this funky little polygon with like a half-mile buffer. And I just wanted to see what were the fuels a half mile along the edge of the unit. Because sometimes it's deceiving if you look at the whole landscape. So I sort of chopped it out. And like I said, there's instructions in the help center on how to draw this thing. If you just type buffer into the search tool in the help center, you'll find the instructions. So we have this table. This is traditionally what we do, right? Is we have a table and we say what's where for our adjacent fuels. Well, this literally breaks it down. So you can see the west side of this unit has a lot more grass GS2 here, which is obviously going to affect your holding plans and things. Whereas on the east side, not only going to have lower fuel moistures because most of this has a easterly aspect, it might dry out faster than say some of the north end. You'll have to know your terrain and your elevations and stuff for that kind of thing, but you can definitely try to dig into that a bit more. This is like a 30,000 acre, 20,000 acre unit. So I'm imagining this is broken into smaller pieces for burning. So you could break those smaller subunits out as well. This is more for that bigger kind of programmatic plan, but it gives you a good idea for just getting started. So that's how you do. And then what we do is if this is what your normal plan would look like, a lot of text, a lot of tables, which is fine. It's all the information is here. But if we add in some of these images and charts and graphs and stuff, it makes the burn plan much more readable. And if you're sending this to a technical reviewer, if I'm the technical reviewer and I'm not familiar with the area, I am going to be able to give you a lot better feedback if I have this information right in the plan. A lot of people stick this stuff in the appendix, which is fine. It's included and that's required. But if I can embed some of this right within the text and really help illustrate some of these things I have in the meat of the plan, it'll, like I said, I think you'll get a lot better feedback on it. And I think you can tease out some things that'll really help in the implementation part. So I really encourage people to put pictures and some of these charts and graphs and stuff in here to really show, and it saves you a lot of writing. That's the biggest piece, right? Picture's worth 1,000 words. In this case, it literally is. You won't have to write so much if you start using some of these images. And suggest this. If you're a technical reviewer, I would suggest this to some of the folks you're looking at their plans. As far as a prescription, actually, I'm going to whiz through the prescription really quick. The prescription is kind of the same idea, right? We look at what's in the actual prescription, and then we want to break it down and look at it visually. And IFTDSS gives us a way to do that. So we can run fire behavior based on the low, the moderate, the high end of our prescription. And then we can look at it side by side and then and this basically all I did in here, and I know it's really small on the screen, but all I did here is adjust the fuel moistures. I didn't adjust anything else. I left the winds all the same. I just changed fuel moisture. And I can see what that does to the fire behavior. In this case, this is rate of spread. So it really gives you a way to really tease out what's really affecting your fire behavior on your particular landscape. And in the same way, you could take that and drop it into your prescription in your plan. And not only do you have your table and your actual numbers, but now I can visualize it and I can talk to resource specialists or whatnot. It really gives you a way to make that plan, really enhance the plan for review and such. For holding, we learned a lot from the 2022 the Forest Service National Review. I think their biggest bonus was adding this critical weather step-up stuff at the bottom. This is part D that was added into their template. I would recommend everybody put that in, and then you can use IFTDSS to help inform some of that. So in our holding plan, right, we're always looking for critical holding points. So what I did here, same units, is I ran that rate of spread for the whole area. And then I basically looked at, places like where could the fire squirt through? So this is rate of spread on the map. And you can see the green is a lot lower rate of spread and the orange and yellow is a lot higher. So where are places, if I had a west wind and I would say I was burning off a subunit on this east side, where might it squirt through and cause me problems? So I tried to identify those on the map, and those can become my critical holding points. You could do this for subunits too within the larger unit. We've got the Forest Service boundary up here, and it's squirting across into the Forest Service. It might not be super popular, so maybe I want to enhance my holding on this north end. So anyway, this gives me a way to actually look at it. So that's rate of spread. This is flame length. Where am I going to have spotting issues? I can look at flame length, just simply flame length down here, and that's going to give me an idea for holding. And again, taking these pieces and dropping them into my burn plan. Now I'm writing my burn plan, my critical holding section, but then I can also drop in a couple images. And now if I'm a holding boss and I'm coming to help on this and I'm not familiar, it very quickly gives me a way to understand, what's on that map and what do I need to pay attention to. I also put in here, and I'll talk about this here in a second for the wildfire stuff, but this is the, let's see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. I don't know if I can. There we go. Hopefully that helped. This is the potential control locations, PCL. You guys may have seen this in the RMA dashboard. We have these same layers in IFTDSS, and you can look at these on the map. So this is our burn unit. I'm looking at potential control locations, right? And for the most part in this area, because of the nature of the fuels, the roads are really your only potential control locations. So for holding, this can be a really great resource for holding. Really encourage people to use this, and it helps, again, tell the story of how you're going to implement these things on the ground. So that's PCL, potential control locations. And then this is the suppression difficulty index, which is the other one that we see in the RMA dashboard. And now it might have, the control locations might be somewhat sparse up here, but the suppression difficulty you can see on the east side is a lot lower in the blue because that's a different fuel type. it's flatter, it's easier to access. So actually the suppression difficulty is fairly low, even though your control location might be, the road. Chances are you could catch spots and stuff on this end because of the difference in terrain, and this index helps you kind of identify that. Whereas on the south end, you can see the suppression difficulty is quite high. So if I'm going to do some burning on this part of it, I might need to think about the resources I need and the organization I need to deal with that south end. That's why looking at this stuff spatially, I think, is really hugely beneficial in informing these plans. I'm going to skip through this part, but this is looking at spot fires. I think I showed you this a little earlier on where you can put a spot fire and game out how that might look if you get a wind event or a drop in RH or something you didn't expect. And then we can game those things out using that minimum travel time. Where might the spot fire go after, 2 hours of spread? So that's just some different ways to do that. So that's sort of the burn plan. So that's kind of how I look at these. I take a burn plan. I think about where can the spatial stuff enhance what I've already written and really give a story and a picture to some of the text I have. So that's the burn plan side. So I've kind of thrown some of this in as we've been talking, but the wildfire modeling part, we can switch gears to wildfires and think of the same tools, right, for wildfire, just like we did in WFTDS. In this case, I'm looking at the Cottonwood Peak fire from last year, and I just gamed out a minimum travel time, what on this northeast side in a 3-day kind of consistent weather over those 3 days, how big might the fire get? So that's what we did. This is minimum travel time. I tell it what the fuel moistures are, the wind speeds, wind direction, and I say, give me 3 burn periods of 6 hours apiece. And then it basically grows the fire and I can see where it's going to go. So what I want to emphasize about using IFTDSS for wildfire modeling is WFTDS is still the authoritative source for wildfires, right? We still have to do a decision and we still have to do it in WFTDS. But IFTDSS can provide the modeling pieces, and so can FlamMap. There's no direct connection right now. Like I can't run it in IFTDSS and it magically appears in WFTDSS. That's not there yet. They are trying to build a service this summer, and I don't know if it'll be done in time, but so it'll be easier to take the outputs from IFTDSS and make them available to pull into WFTDSS. It won't be automated, but it'll make it easier for folks to do that. Right now, what I would do is I would take a screen capture like I have here on the left, and I would upload it into the decision for WFTDSS. And I'll show you some stuff here in a second where I would put those things. So just like you would upload an image maybe for WFTDSS, it's the same thing as doing this. It's just a screenshot. You're going to have to put a caption with it and then put it into the WFTDSS decision. So I just want people to be clear on that the IFTDSS is not authoritative for decisions. We're just taking the models and putting it into WFTDSS. But you can get landscapes from IFTDSS and use them in FlamMap, which is pretty convenient. Certainly using the map and viewing some of those SDI and PCL layers is really great. You can look at RAS stations. You can pull up Meso West directly from the RAS station. We do have the VIIRS infrared heat detections now. That's all in IFTDSS available to look at. And we're going to have KMZs where you can download any of these things and put them into WFTDSS, into Google Earth to use. So that's how IFTDSS is going to be available this summer for fire modeling. So that's kind of what this is showing you, that IFTDSS can dump things. You can take them from IFTDSS, put them into WFTDSS. You kind of have to do it manually. WFTDSS is the only place to run FS Pro, and it's the only place to publish a decision. So we're still doing that over here in WFTDSS. But IFTDSS and FlamMap, the desktop version of some of this software, can generate these fire behavior outputs. And that's what a lot of FBANs and LTANs are using. If you're asking for help, that's probably what they'll use. If you're not doing it yourself, that's what they're going to use to put some of this stuff into WFTDSS. This is some of the modeling. I just threw Cottonwood Peak in here into IFTDSS, and I just wanted to look at that basic landscape fire behavior again. So say I'm a division soup or, ops person, and I'm trying to get an idea of just rate of spread around this whole area. So this is what my fire perimeter is now. This will instantly show you where you might have rate of spread problems. You can see the 20 to 50 is most of this orange on here. This layer over here is the Humboldt-Toyabe boundary. So you can see it's starting to spread into the forest. We've got Tuscarora is the little town down here on the south. So you can see if you're trying to protect this town, you can see some of the rates of spread down here in this pink orange color. It just gives you a very visual, instant idea of where there might be problems. So you don't even have to go any further analysis than that. You can see here, this is the fuel moistures that I used. So say you get a little, uptick in moisture and it kind of slows things down. You could rerun this with those new fuel moistures and then see where things are going to settle down, maybe where you have opportunities to put some more line in. So I think you can use these really basic runs for stuff like that. This would be flame length. Again, it's going to show you where you're going to have higher flame lengths. And again, going into this little town down here, this is where you're might have spotting. If you have a northwest wind, you might get spotting down here going into the community. That's going to cause issues. So, again, just really quickly, you can get a really broad idea of where the big picture pieces might be problems, or might be easier. You might have a lot easier or way to go down here. Some of the greens, lower flame lengths. Maybe those are opportunities to make some headway on getting some line in. So I think those are this is all in IFTDSS, and I think this, just like I showed you before and running it for prescribed fire, it's really simple to set the map up, put in your fuel moistures and your wind speeds and get these outputs. This is that minimum travel time again, showing you how the fire can move off to the northeast. And then this was an example of how fast would the fire move into that little town of Tuscarora if I had these weather conditions over here. So this was a 3-hour burn period for 3 burn periods over, and this is the fuel moistures that I was using with a 15-mile-an-hour wind out of the northeast. So you can game all these things out to see how much time do you have. Do we need to set an evacuation zone or get the, spool up the county sheriff or whatnot. So this will give you some rough estimates. They're models. Take them and generalize them a bit, but at least it's somewhat informative and give you a ballpark if you're new to the fire or whatever. With IFTDSS, if you take all these things after you run this stuff, this is the relative risk part of IFTDSS, and this is probably the best place to put some of these model outputs in your hazards, maybe in your probability area. So in IFTDSS, you use these little drop downs, and when you're writing your decision, you can see in this one, they put an FS Pro run in here. You could take those images from IFTDSS and drop them into these pieces of the decision. So for now, it's a little clunky, little manual, but that's what we've got going into fire season this year. Hopefully they'll get that service set up. And when they do, they'll probably explain some of that on the GA editor calls to help people understand how to do it. I haven't heard yet how that's going to work. And then this was just some of the PCL for the Cottonwood Peak, potential control locations, suppression difficulty, same layers. Again, you can use IFTDSS to look at these. And that's pretty much what I wanted to go through, is just sort of walking you through how to use this for prescribed fire, wildfire, what's available. Now at least you're aware, or if you're one of the people who's going to be doing the analysis, maybe you know where to get started now. Or if you're more on the management side and you just need to get some of these outputs, you know what to ask for. So those are sort of the capabilities. I'm going to turn it over to Bree Schuler really quick, so she can talk about what's coming, because we're continuing to build as much as we can into IFTDSS, as long as they give us money and people to do it. So go for it, Bree.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, gotcha.
So we've got some exciting things coming up soon, actually. We're going to be releasing a brand new mapping platform, and it might not mean a lot to the users because a lot of it is more of like a maintenance that we have to do to continue to keep IFTDSS operating on the best and the most stable systems. So we used an Esri mapping platform, and the platform that we originally built IFTDSS on is actually expiring and won't be supported by Esri soon. And so we just upgraded and we'll be hoping to release that into our production environment come June-ish. We are going to be looking, this is a plug, we're going to be looking for some folks to do some beta testing for us of that. So if that's something that you would be interested in, we'll be likely doing that testing in May. That's basically just kind of hammering on the system and making sure that we worked out all the kinks with the new map upgrade. There is with that too, we did add some enhancements as we went, some things that users have been asking for with the map over time. So we just took the opportunity to do some enhancements there too. We're also, Kim had mentioned KML, KMZ output. So we're going to be trying to squeeze this functionality in by June. So folks that are using the system for fire season can download model outputs and view those in Google Earth as they're supporting wildfires this summer. Another really exciting thing that's been in the hopper for a long time that we're finally getting off the ground is that we are looking to release, again, hopefully this summer, June, July, possibly FTEM mobile app. So those of you that do fuel treatment effectiveness monitoring for your units, we are going to be releasing a survey 123 type system for FTEM, so you can use your mobile device to collect that monitoring data in the field, and then it would update the system automatically when you come back in and connect to Wi-Fi. So we're also very excited about that. And then in terms of our tech transfer efforts, and Kim has been helping with some of this along the way, but we are going to be wrapping up an IFTDSS for NEPA course that will be on the Wildfire Learning Portal. And so that'll be a self-led course that uses some of our existing training materials in our help center, but then kind of beefs up a program that would walk a person through on how to use the system and the different pieces of the system you can use to do, say, an effects analysis for NEPA documentation. So that's coming. Also looking at a June, July release of that. In terms of things that we're going to start building this summer that we're hoping to release either at the end of this year or into 2027, we've started doing some design with Duncan Lutz, who works with the Missoula Fire Science Lab on integrating spatial FOFM, so some effects modeling into IFTDSS. So the first step of that will be building a consumption and emissions module into the system that can help folks with their prescribed burn planning. Also could be used for other things such as NEPA, but that will be consumption and emissions outputs will come first. And then we will be adding the tree mortality part of spatial FOFM after that. So that one, tree mortality will definitely be into 2027, but keeping fingers crossed that we might be able to get consumption and emissions in the system before the end of the calendar year. And so again, that'll allow users to create reports with some maps. So you actually be able to map emissions, say if that's something that interests you, to include in your burn plans or your NEPA documentation. And then we're also working on a quantitative wildfire risk assessment course that will also go in the learning portal along with some other material, again, that we've already got in our help center, but we really want to beef up some of the QWRA learning that we've got, especially when it comes to interpretation and how to use something like ENVC, for example, for those of you that are familiar with risk outputs. So that's another thing that we've got in the hopper that we're hoping to have available for folks either the end of this year into 2027. So lots of exciting things still coming with IFTDSS. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Well, that's pretty much what we got for you. I guess we took most of our time, and I don't know, Dylan, anything you want to ask or anybody else in the room? I know that was a ton of information. We are available anytime with help desk. If you want to shoot us a question, you can find us. I'm on FireNet, Kim _Ernstrom at FireNet and Breeze USDA. So please don't hesitate to holler at us if you have questions and stuff. And you can always just send a ticket to the help desk and we'll help you that way too.
No, awesome. Thank you, Kim. And I'm gonna, real quick, if there are any questions, we got time for maybe one question. Otherwise, I'd please ask you to follow up with either myself or Kim after this meeting. And Kim, we definitely appreciate the help from you and the IFTDSS folks. Appreciation from Nevada BLM, Nevada Wildland Fire Service, and all of us here in the room as well. So, and the Great Basin Strategic Fire Planning Committee. So for any of you folks that participated, thank you for your participation. Hopefully you find this beneficial in your preseason WIFTDS preparedness. So yeah, I don't have anything else, Kim. Definitely appreciate everything that you put into this and appreciate the time. I learned a lot.
Thanks. Yeah, hopefully you guys can, you know, hit us up if you need any other, and I imagine we're going to see everybody this summer because it's going to be a doozy.
And as long as you're okay with it, Kim, I do plan on posting this to YouTube as well. So I'll get the
Please
video
do.
processed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we'll probably list it in our webinars section as well. So, thank you for doing that. And, yeah, spread the word. Hopefully we can help
Awesome.
everybody. Thanks a ton.
Great. Well, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah. See y'all soon.